Welcome to the Shukri Wrights Podcast with your host, Shukri Wrights. This is now episode 4. Now, episode 3 last week, in case if you may have heard it, was essentially the final radio show at 91.5 WMFO for the time being due to the outbreak of the coronavirus. Now, this time around, I decided to do something a little bit interesting. Number one, the first thing I decided to do was still record on the podcast as I usually would. And number two, I decided to incorporate Facebook Live. So for those who are able to tune in now and watch me do the live recording of the podcast would be able to watch me do as such, and as well as interact and send any questions you may have so that I can answer them on the podcast and so forth. I don't know why I didn't think of this idea before, but all thanks and glory belongs to the Almighty Creator. So I give him great credit for giving me this idea. So I'm very much grateful and thankful for that. So there's definitely a lot to get into, and what really has been an absolutely crazy 7 days. Since it's been 7 days now since the shutdown of sports as we know it. Remember, you had to go back to a week ago. If you remember, I had broke the news live on the air on 91.5 WMFO and nationally on the TuneIn Radio app that the Major League Baseball, National Hockey League, had decided that they were going to suspend the season indefinitely. And that in itself was as heart-pounding of breaking sports news as I've ever done in my broadcasting career. And it was definitely something that I realized then that this is a bigger story than any of us had even realized. So as this was unfolding in slow motion, I gotta tell you, to me, it really just felt surreal, like a complete out-of-body experience, as I would later explain to someone off the air. And I would actually explain that I've now been blessed to have done quite a few radio shows now in my now growing radio broadcasting career, and I have never been a part of anything remotely close to what I was a part of last Thursday, as the news literally broke while I was on the air, and I broadcasted it live on the airwaves on 91.5 WMFO and nationally on TuneIn Radio as well. It was just unbelievable. And even now, here we are 7 days later, it's absolutely just still shocking. And I think for some people, the shock factor is still there. For others, it's more of like, oh my God, what do we do here? And for those that are here in New England, it was all made worse by the news of Tom Brady deciding that he was going to leave the New England Patriots. More on that later in this episode. So for right now, I wanted to start off the episode talking about basically like what now? Like, what do you do now? So I talked about in detail about how last Thursday was really the day that just changed everything completely. And I mentioned how like the NBA, did its job, taking the actual steps needed to stop the season and not wait until something had gotten worse. And I also mentioned about, sports being shut down indefinitely. The NFL, obviously we're being in the off season, but you still have NFL free agency, which started yesterday at 4:00, the new league year. And there's also have been like a flurry of moves and trades. Well, we can always get to that in another episode and so forth. Not to mention also the suspension of MLB and the NHL seasons indefinitely, and I definitely think there's a lot to digest and all of that. With all that being said, and even as a sports fan, even as an ardent sports fan like myself, it really has been pretty surreal. You know, you turn on the TV and you're just like, what the hell do I do? Like, what the hell do you do with yourself? Now, I'm going to be completely transparent with you, the audience, and I'm going to say that it's been tough staying in. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, there's only but so many classic sports games and reliving certain highlights and so forth that I could do before I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, I need to get out and go give me some damn fresh air. Like the hell with this. So, um, like, case in point, like today, I just said, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to either want to pin someone along the wall, or I'm either going to want to throw them off the balcony of a building somewhere. So I'm going to go outside for a little bit. But I decided to go out because I needed to actually pick up some key items for the house and so forth for myself. So with that being said, it was really strange just walking around Fenway, and it was just not a whole lot of action going on for obvious reasons. But nonetheless, it doesn't make it any less surreal. It was just like, whoa, like, where's everybody? There are people here and there and so forth, and people doing their part to practice the good old social distancing and so forth, all that fun stuff. But I get to Target, and I gotta tell you, it was just like a fresh reminder that there are still some places that are still operating under the guise of business as usual, but a bit more down-tuned, if you will, modified in more ways than one. So it was definitely good to be able to get out, walk around, interact with some people and so forth, and it was definitely much needed. Because listen, I never was one to really get too far deep into this whole topic and discussion of how long does it take before the human mind decides to go absolutely haywire with no sort of human contact. And I'm not just talking about just spending time with like family and friends and so forth, because I'm the only one here in New England. My family's in New York, which is severely impacted by the whole coronavirus situation, and the number of cases in New York City and New York State is rising rapidly every day, almost every hour, if we're going to be completely honest. And so traveling really isn't the best idea for right now. If you do, travel at your own risk, and take the necessary precautions that you absolutely need to do. So, but thankfully, I was able to talk with both my mom and my dad today, and they both are doing well. Both are healthy, so I'm definitely grateful to the Almighty Creator for that. That's not something I'm taking very lightly, considering the magnitude of the situation. So I will tell you that even through all of the malaise and the uncertainty that's going on, and I know that it certainly has not been easy at all, I'm grateful for the fact that there have been people who have done an absolute remarkable job of, reaching out and, being a daily reminder that everything's going to be okay, and so forth. And thank you very much, Brooke, for the message of staying safe. For those that are watching on Facebook Live as I do this podcast, which will be available sooner than later. And once the Facebook Live feed is done, I will have it ready to distribute. I'm not sure if my SoundCloud account will be of help, but I'm going to see if I can maybe get it on Spotify or if that takes longer or whatnot. I mean, we'll see. We'll see how it all goes and so forth. But at any rate, how have you been throughout this entire situation now that we are now, 7 days without live sports? Like, how have you handled it? Feel free to send me your thoughts and questions, via Twitter. You can hit me up on Twitter at Shukri Wrights. That's at SHUKRIWRIGHTS. You can hit me on Facebook Live for those who are watching on Facebook Live and whatnot. Any thoughts as pertains to the world of sports. And I gotta tell you again, like this whole week has just been something that, obviously none of us has really ever experienced before. And I will tell you that, and I just want to put this out there very quickly, my thoughts and prayers of those who have been directly impacted by the coronavirus and those who have passed on as a result of the coronavirus. So my thoughts and prayers are with all of those who have been impacted so far. Now, as to the world of sports, it's been crazy, to say the least. Now, there is one item of breaking news that did take place over the past hour plus that broke via ESPN, that left-handed pitcher Chris Sale of the Boston Red Sox is going to be undergoing Tommy John surgery. And I gotta tell you, for those who have been listening to the Shukri Wrights Show on 91.5 FM WMFO since its launch last July, know that I have been very consistent, especially when he went down for the 2019 season last August with shoulder trouble and arm trouble, that this was inevitable. So when the news broke that he was finally going to be, undergoing the knife of Tommy John, unfortunately, I gotta tell you, I wasn't shocked at all. And to me, it was just like, ho-hum, okay, now it's happening. I've been very emphatic about this throughout this entire process and throughout this entire situation. And going back to last year, now, a year ago at this time, for those that don't know, I was a sports journalist for the Yawkey Red Report, which is a publication that covers the Boston Red Sox. And I was very clear back then in an article in a column that I wrote that I don't think the contract the Red Sox gave Chris Sale was a good idea. And I'm going to revisit that reason right now. And I mentioned at that time that, number one, he hasn't proven to the Red Sox that he could pitch at a high level from the start of the season to the end of the season. That's number one. Number two, you saw trouble of the physical durability and his ability to be able to continue to pitch at a high level in 2018, especially in the second half of 2018, where, let's be honest, he just was not right physically, especially in October during that Red Sox World Series run in 2018. He physically wasn't right. He wasn't. And thirdly, I saw it at the time that the Red Sox were just desperately trying to not make the same mistake that the Red Sox had previously made. If you Red Sox fans may remember John Lester in 2014 and how they handled that situation. Because remember, John Lester was the ace of that 2013 World Series championship team. And John Henry and the ownership group, you can also include Ben Cherington, the former general manager, severely mismanaged that situation, did not give Lester the contract extension that he certainly deserved at that time. And unfortunately, it backfired, and they ended up trading him that July to the Oakland A's, who were in pursuit of a postseason spot in which they would eventually capture. But as for the Red Sox, it was a clear-cut example as to the wrong kind of move that eventually backfired in the media and as well as the entire fan base, because it was definitely a shocking move when I first heard it, considering that what John Lester meant to the Red Sox, especially to that pitching staff at that time, and how invaluable he was, being a member of the Boston Red Sox. So fast forward to Chris Sale, and I know that they traded, Yohan Moncada, Michael Kopech to the Red Sox. I'm sorry, to the White Sox, pardon me, in the Chris Sale deal. And it was really one of those instances where I personally couldn't even believe that the Red Sox were willing to make that kind of risk. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized, you know what? This is definitely a desperation type of move. I shouldn't be shocked by any of this at all. And in fact, I wasn't. And my concern was, and I just want to quickly say thank you to Miguel Caraballo, Thomas Jagielski, forgive me if I'm saying your last name wrong, and whatnot, for the be safe messages and so forth. Now, Ray, you mentions in the feed that he is a solid starting pitcher. Okay, he's hurt. It happens. You missed my point entirely. You missed my point entirely, and my point is not the fact that he's not a good pitcher, and so forth. This isn't about Sale as is he a solid starting pitcher or not. That has never been my case, and it wasn't the case then, and it isn't the case now. My point is, for a guy who has not shown the ability to remain healthy through the full course of a 162 season, in a pitcher's case, 32 starts during a regular season, and plus several more should you make it to October. And Chris Sale hadn't really proven that, and so forth. So my point is, and this is not just an opportunity to bash Chris Sale and so forth, no. But if you were listening from the beginning of this particular topic, I have been saying that Chris Sale, I don't think he was worthy of that contract back then. It was a risk, and I don't think it was a risk worth taking. That your best pitcher was so banged up in October of 2018 that he essentially came out of the bullpen, especially on the latter stages of the 2018 World Series. That's my point. And if this is the new reality that Red Sox fans are going to have to be dealing with in regards to Chris Sale, then I would be really concerned. And I think my point of being concerned is very much warranted. I don't think it's insane to bring up this very point and so forth. Now, as for what it means moving forward for the 2020 Red Sox, if there is even a baseball season, who knows? Right now, there are bigger, obviously, more pressing matters that we need to worry about than the start of the sports seasons again, especially for the NHL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, and so forth, and whatnot. And just a quick note on Sean Payton, who it was announced earlier that he had tested positive for the coronavirus. I would like to send you my heartfelt get well soon wishes, and it's really another stark reminder of just how serious the situation really is, and so forth. So I just wanted to put that out there, and I just want to say thank you to those who are listening and watching this now via the Facebook live stream, and those who will be listening to the podcast a little later on once this is ready to be listened to and downloaded and whatnot. Now to the final topic of this podcast that I want to touch on, and that is Tom Brady is no longer a New England Patriot. Wow. I think as a collective whole, like we are still like basically trying to process that news and that news of the fact that Brady is no longer with the New England Patriots, and I think that in itself is really just unbelievable in its own right. I mean, you talk about a guy who was drafted in the sixth round. We obviously know the story. Drafted in the sixth round, 199th overall pick in the 2000 NFL draft, and it was just basically just it was just a fairy tale story from basically and whatnot, and it really was just amazing because when you consider that he wasn't even really like seriously considered by any of the any of the teams like basically in the first or even the second rounds, and it's in that interview that was done by I believe it was by ESPN many years back, where he basically talked about that trying time, especially during the NFL draft. Now I just want to address a comment that came via the Facebook Live stream. Well, it's easy saying now that the Reds has made a mistake citing him coming from a Yankee fan. No, again, like it's not easy saying now. I said it then. I said it back then, and I don't know why I get the feeling that you're getting defensive, but it's actually quite foolish. I said it a year ago that it was a mistake in terms of the financial commitment, and I wasn't the only one who shared in that concern. If you go back and you watch some of the interviews that were done, and even hell, some of the sports coverage here voiced the concern of signing a guy who basically was not very durable, and proved again in 2019 wasn't very durable and whatnot, that you're signing a guy to a multi-year deal, and now that he's going to be approaching the wrong side of 30, you gave him a 5-year deal contract extension. But I digress. Back to the aftershocks of Brady no longer being a New England Patriots. As I was saying, I think for a lot of Patriot fans and even a lot of sports fans here in Boston, I mean, considering that everything that's gone on, the fact that Brady is gone, it is sad. I'm not gonna deny that. It's a fact. I mean, but the ramifications of Brady leaving the Patriots to go sign with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is huge. I mean, let's start with number one. What happens now in terms of the Patriots, the national coverage, because that's certainly a factor in terms of, number one, if you're the NFL, and keep in mind that the NFL hasn't even released the schedule for the 2020 regular season just yet. That hasn't come out. We do know the opponents. Just want to put that out there. We do know the opponents for every team across the league, but we just don't know the schedule. So you wonder, with Brady gone, and now the Patriots entering what is practically uncharted territories, do you still give the Patriots the same amount of national televised games as they were before? That remains to be seen. I'm not going to sit here and make any type of predictions as to what's going to happen or what they will do or what they should do, but I do wonder the following. I do wonder if the Patriots themselves understand the absolute gravity of the fact that they decided not to bring back Tom Brady anymore. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to say this now. The next episode of the podcast I do, I would say that the next episode that I do, I'm actually going to spend basically the entire episode talking about Tom Brady and what he meant to New England throughout his entire career as a Patriot, and the sadness that has absolutely engulfed all of New England, Boston, all of Patriots Nation, and frankly, I'm with the fan. I'm with the fan right now in the sadness, but I also have to say that I'm not shocked whatsoever. I've been very adamant about this since last August, and I said this on the Shukri Wrights Show when it was from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. on 91.5 WMFO and the TuneIn Radio app, that I wouldn't be shocked based on the contract that was given to him at that time that 2019 season would be the last season for Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. If I'm able to ever find that video or that clip that I recorded and I posted on social media at that time, I'm going to be posted. I'm going to share it again. Tag the date and everything and so forth. Just want to go back and just read some of the comments that I have here. Jamal Taylor, I'm heartbroken. I'm with you. Ray, I'm not being defensive, bro. Nothing but respect for you. Back at you, Brad. Like, no harm, no foul. Like, I have nothing but the utmost respect for you as well. But there are certain points that have to be made and has to be said, even though, but there's certain points that have to be said and have to be acknowledged, and I would be doing an absolute disservice if I didn't do exactly as such. But again, as I mentioned, I'm going to dedicate my very next episode. I don't know when that will be. That may come tomorrow. That may come Saturday. Once it's been a few days to really digest all of this that has transpired. To talk about Tom Brady and the impact of his departure that's being felt here in New England, and especially for the Boston sports scene, because, wow, talk about a rough 2020. Yeah, it's been a rough 2020 so far. But that I will say for the next episode of the Shukri Wrights podcast. So I'm going to start to wrap up the episode. We've got maybe a couple of minutes left at most. So far, so good. It looks like the experiment of doing the podcast audio-wise and as well as doing on the Facebook Live stream as well, look like it has worked so far. As for the video, I am going to actually try tonight to upload it as well as on YouTube as well. And hopefully this works out the best way I possibly can imagine and whatnot. And just to check back in the last comment I have here, by the way, Realman Cook, thank you very much. I couldn't agree more. That will also be part of the next episode as well. So stay tuned. Stay tuned for that. As for when I will be back on the radio airwaves, I don't know. But for right now, the podcast seems to be the best route to go. And that in itself is something that I am more than happily willing and able to embrace at this point. So if this happens to be an avenue where I can be able to talk about some of the thoughts that I have as well as everything that's happening in terms of sports and so forth, then I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it for my advantage and hope for the best, and whatnot. So with all of that being said, it's time to wrap up this edition of the Shukri Wrights Podcast with your host, Shukri Wrights. I want to say thank to all of you who have tuned in, and for those who are watching on Facebook Live, much appreciated. Like I said, the next episode of the podcast will be essentially on the impact of Tom Brady leaving the New England Patriots, as well as his impact on Boston and as well as the Boston sports scene. Until next time, thanks for tuning in. Much appreciated. And everybody, stay safe, stay healthy, and I look forward to talking to you guys very soon. Take care.